First, Rochester Drug Cooperative and two former executives have been charged in the nation's ongoing opioid crisis. RDC, one of the top 10 largest pharmaceutical distributors in the country, is accused of not reporting suspicious orders for opioids in what could be the first of many cases to come. Joining us right now is former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb. And Dr. Gottlieb, thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
First time we're sitting down with you since you've left the post.
That's right. Thank you.
Again, we appreciate the work you did there, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks.
This story, I think, is really interesting on many levels. First of all, it's the first of many cases that could come like it, but I was kind of shocked at the low number. They talked about a settlement for $20 million to get the company off the hook on this when you are talking about admitting to basically hooking people on opioids, something that kills 130 people a day in this country.
Right. Well, look, they've been going after the distributors for a while now. The other cases have been civil penalties, and they've had settlements with Cardinal Health, for example. McKesson had a big settlement. What's novel here is this is criminal.
Yeah.
It's a deferred prosecution of the company itself. They seem to be going after this ex-CEO.
And the former, well, the guy who's
he looks like
he's
cooperating, right. So I think what the message this sends is that they're going to now criminalize activity of individuals as well in these companies. I think that's going to send a chilling message through the industry. I think if you're a distributor or you're a drug wholesaler or even a company marketing products in this space, I think the message is it's not enough just to police your supply chain. It's not enough just to report findings of potentially, illegal sales to physicians or pharmacies. You're going to have to actively step in now and take affirmative action to try to cut those supplies off. That's what the government's really saying to these distributors. Is
that an effective strategy? Is that something that you will think will help in the opioid war?
Well, I think it's certainly going to help. But what the government's effectively doing is they're taking their obligation to sort of do the policing work, and they're now affirmatively putting it on the distributors themselves. They're saying you now have to take on some of this obligation. So it's a good way for the government to try to spread its resources by putting the obligation on the wholesalers. But I bet you the wholesalers, and they've been doing this for a long time, have taken on more of a role in actually trying to police the sales and go in, investigate, cut off supplies. So the costs are going up of distributing these drugs. This is the price we're going to have to pay to deal with what is the biggest public health crisis facing the country.
I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Joe, when you think about the distributors, and you were talking earlier about how healthcare has not participated in this rally to this point, this may be a big part of the reason.
Yeah, I think it is. I think certainly there's concerns about what the potential liability is going to be. And I think the problem is the absence of clarity in the near term. So you don't get any visibility on, okay, is there liability or not going to be liability? I think you have to be very tactical in the healthcare space when you're allocating towards it. The medical device makers, as I said before, that's a focus point. But there are, for healthcare right now, there's political headwinds. There's the potential headwinds that we're discussing in terms of liability. And I don't think the healthcare space has really seen that in many, many years.
Well, the president's giving a speech today on opioids. I would expect he'll talk about this prosecution as well as the case last week against the providers that the Eastern District brought, the biggest case ever in the history of the country against individual providers, and talk about the increased oversight of the Justice Department. The president signaled that they're interested in getting involved in some of these state cases, the litigation against the opioid manufacturers as well.
Hey, Scott, there is progress being made in really potent pain medications that aren't as addictive as these, or is it just it's a tough one?
There's progress in non-addictive alternatives to opioids. It's still early stage development. I think the biggest challenge we face right now is that the opioid crisis was a crisis formed from prescription drugs, oftentimes from a lawful prescription. People became medically addicted. But now it's shifting to a crisis of illicit drugs where people are buying counterfeit, what they think is Vicodin and Percocet. It's really pressed fentanyl. And that's why you see overdose deaths going up, because even as prescriptions come down, more people who are now becoming addicted to street drugs that are super potent formulations of fentanyl that are killing them.
How many started as with genuine back pain or something? Well, and if we were to, from now on, none of those people would get started, would we be just left with the people that are already addicted? I mean, is there a way to get at the organic cause of this, which is pain?
You can certainly treat people who are suffering from addiction right now. There's approved therapies, there's good psychosocial therapy that helps people transition to lives of sobriety. Most of the legacy addiction was addiction that was formed in the medical setting by indiscriminate prescribing. We were too loose in prescribing these drugs for too long.
Too, I think, Scott.
Of course, and there was criminal behavior as well. There's been people who have been criminally sanctioned.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge now is that more of the new addiction is being formed from street drugs, so the nature of the crisis is shifting. What the FDA and Customs and Border Protection is going to be doing for the first time is, if you look at if you look at flows of illegal drugs coming across the border, it's always measured in pounds. That really isn't a good proxy for the addictive potential now that it's super potent formulations of fentanyl. So for the first time, they're going to be testing those drugs and reporting it in morphine equivalents.
Would a heroin addict that injects heroin like fentanyl, I mean, is that now the drug of choice for opioid addicts, fentanyl? Is it, or is it still
or they just don't even
heroin?
know that they're...
Well, there's a big heroin problem as well. There's a big methamphetamine problem that people aren't talking about.
Right, but
That's
for opioids, what is opioid not heroin now? What's the biggest?
Fentanyl's become a big problem, and a lot of times the formulations of fentanyl that people are taking are pressed fentanyl. They're buying Xanax online or Vicodin or Percocet. They think they're getting an opioid, but they're really getting pressed fentanyl in formulations that are not reliable, and that's why you see people overdosing on those drugs.
Which comes back to the China trade talks.
Yeah.
And the way that we're coming after that is part of the trade talks.
A lot of it's coming in from China, a lot of it's coming across the border, but a lot of it's coming from China.
Playing with fire. Just say no. We're back to Nancy Reagan. Just say no. People that are thinking about, right? You got kids and stuff like that in college. I mean, you got to just say no, don't you? Or else you're going to find yourself addicted to opium.
Is there a way to quantify the economic impact of this crisis?
CEA has done that. I forget the number, but it was enormous. The Council of Economic Advisors has put a number on that.